Joining me is award-winning director and producer Jon Dunham, and he's produced films Spirit of the Marathon 1 and 2 and the Boston Marathon documentary. And he's also an avid runner and cyclist. And he's here today to talk about his films, his award-winning films, and how he's coping in Italy during the COVID-19. Welcome to my very first Zoom interview, Jon.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
So how are you?
Well, you mean dealing with the lockdown?
Yes.
Actually, as we speak, as we do this interview, you may hear some noise. I have my 3-year-old son in the other room. We're all locked down here as a family, so it's been a real challenge. It's definitely frustrating. We live in southern Italy, where the climate is beautiful, and we're used to being outside and enjoying the outdoors, and not being able to do that is really rough. So it's been a big adjustment, and we're just taking it one day at a time.
Yes. And like with working out, are you doing gym workouts like what you can being locked down?
Running after my 3-year-old son is my working
Yes.
out. No,
Yes.
we regrettably, we don't have any. We don't have a gym here in the house. We don't have a treadmill. We don't have weights. We don't have anything. So it's yeah, it's tough. About the only exercise we've been able to get is just going out from time to time and walking to the supermarket to do some grocery shopping. But that's, not what I'm used to.
No, and you're not allowed to run, right? There's no running
No,
allowed.
this the whole lockdown here in Italy has been handled in different ways and in different regions. And there are people in different parts of the country who have been able to do some exercise, staying close to their homes. Ironically, in the north, in Lombardia, Milano, where most of the concentration of the virus is, they've actually had looser restrictions than we have down south. So, it's again been really frustrating for me and us as a family, not being able to get outside and exercise when there are people in other parts of Italy that can.
Mm-hmm. And Jon, how long you been like it's been locked down? Like how long has it
That's a
been?
good question. You go through this after a while, and everything starts to blur together, and you don't really have an idea. You have to consult the calendar to know, what day it is. Um, I think this all started, it was starting to happen at the end of February and the beginning of March. I'd have to go back and see kind of exactly what day it was. I remember I went out for a run, the last day that I actually could go out for a run. I did about 15K around the city. And, then I'm so glad I did it. The very next day, they had a lockdown and just said, nope, no more exercise at all. So I at least got that in while I could.
Yes. I mean, have you done like any virtual exercises, like on TV or whatever, like working out? Have you tried that or?
No, no, I haven't. I know we've had friends that have done those things. Honestly, it's been such a crazy experience. We've just kind of spent our time getting used to being at home, and how do we deal with that, and kind of, I don't know that we've really truly gotten into a routine with it. But the we're mostly concerned about our son, and just
Oh.
keeping him occupied, and
Mhm.
trying to explain to him, why we can't go out and do things. He asked me this morning, he said, I want to go to the park. And, how do you explain to a 3-year-old kid that's used to going to the park that we can't go to the park? So
Yes. And then like do
our
you live near?
attention is focused on him.
Yeah, do you live near a park? Like, to tell me what your area is like.
Yeah, we have. I mean, we live in Napoli, Naples, which is southern Italy's largest city, and it's a city of about 1 million people. It's a very very densely populated city. So it's really urban. It's a port city, so we're right on the waterfront, and that's a nice place to visit when you can.
Hmm.
And there are some really nice parks also that we like to go to, but we just can't right now.
Yes, and you think about, you appreciate what you had, like, the freedom to run, and now it's like visualizing going for that run, and but it's just mind blowing, right? And then having you as like the producer and director of such award-winning films, and that's initially, it's motivating. Have you watched your films too, or are you working on a film? Like, how are your creative juices?
I haven't watched any of my own films during this period. I haven't watched any of my own films for a while, to be honest. You get quite a lot of them while you're making them. So
Mhm.
one of these days, maybe with the Boston Marathon coming up, it'll be a good time to go back and look at Boston, or the would-be date of the Boston Marathon in April,
Yes.
I should say. Um, I am working on some new projects, on the development of those projects. So I didn't have anything in production when the lockdown occurred. So that's a good thing. It didn't interrupt any production work, but I am continuing to develop projects, and hopefully things will start to loosen up a bit. And by the time I'm ready to film something, I can.
Yes. And for those who need motivation to run, can you tell us about your films? You have um, three films, but you've also have a film that was your first ever, called Long Distance. Was that right?
Long distance, no, too far. Long distance, too
Yes.
far.
Yes.
Yeah, that it's a 40-minute film that I made actually just right out of film school.
Hmm.
It was about a charitable cycling event in California, where I'm originally from San Francisco to Los Angeles. That was to raise funds for AIDS service organizations.
Yes.
And so, yeah, that's not available anywhere publicly. It's not for sale or anything like that. But yeah, that kind of set me on the road to making documentaries that were related to sport and human interest stories.
That's wonderful. And now Boston is now going to happen in September. So the people who want to get inspired, tell us about Boston Marathon, the documentary, because it's more than about running. It's about um, the history of Boston. Can you tell us more about that, Jon?
Yeah, it all started with my first film, Spirit of the Marathon, which as a runner, as a marathon runner, it was a project that was really personal to me and something that I felt very passionate about. And I really only had uh, the idea to make one film about the marathon, and then I was going to make other films. But I was very fortunate with Spirit of the Marathon. It was very successful, both critically as well as financially. It had a theatrical release, and it it earned a fair amount of money, for at least where documentaries are concerned. And then that put me in the advantageous position of having people that were interested in what I was doing, and available somewhat to finance future projects. And so then I decided to do Spirit of the Marathon 2, and with that film do some of the things that I had wanted to do with the first film but couldn't because I had a limited budget or time or whatever. And it was actually Spirit of the Marathon 2 that really brought me to Italy. I had been to Italy prior to the film, but we chose to make the film around the Rome Marathon, and so then I moved to Rome, and I was living in Rome for a period during that production, and just totally fell in love with Italy and wanted to stay. So that's a really important production to me personally. And then actually, it was during that film that I had already started to think, okay, well, I'm making a second marathon film. Maybe I should just round out the trilogy and make a third, and make it something really special, and make it about the Boston Marathon, which is something that I had always thought about and had talked to the Boston Athletic Association about, and they were interested in it. And this was before 2013, before the bombings occurred. And then I was actually in Rome when the 2013 Boston Marathon took place, and the bombings happened, and I thought immediately, okay, well, I'm not going to be making that film, at least not for a long while, because I didn't. I wanted to make a film about the Boston Marathon and its history, and its importance to running. Um, and then I started to think further down the road to the future, and how the 2014 race, the year um, after the bombings, was really going to be extremely important and meaningful to the race and the city, and everybody involved. And I thought, well, somebody should really document this, and why shouldn't that person be me? I've already made these other films. I always wanted to make a film about the Boston Marathon, and so I decided to move forward with it and pursue it. And I went back to the BAA, and they eventually agreed, and we worked together on it, and made it. And it's of course a very different film from what it would have been had the bombings not occurred. So 2013 and 2014 are a really important part of the film and the race's history. But it's not the only thing that the film is about. I'm always very careful to say this is not a film about the Boston Marathon bombings. It's a film about the Boston Marathon, as I had always wanted to make. And we worked a long time on it. It took us about 4 years to make it, but I'm very grateful that we had the opportunity to make it, and to have all the opportunities that we did, to interview champions around the world, and hear interesting stories, and make it the special film that it is.
Mm-hmm. And where can people watch the films?
Well, Boston is available now in different ways. You're in Canada, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's available in Canada. It should be available in Canada on iTunes and Amazon. There's a DVD available also. For people around the Boston area, actually, this year, since the Boston Marathon will not take place on Patriots Day, the local broadcaster WBZ is showing the film. So yeah, we're pleased that the film can can take the place of the marathon itself, on Patriots Day. And it's also being broadcast on April 16th, a few days prior to, on WGBH, which is the PBS station local to Boston. And then, yeah, as I said, it's iTunes, Amazon, the DVD.
Yes, and I mean, you already said you got projects you're working on. I was going to say what's next for you, but can you talk a little bit about what you're working on, or is it?
Yeah, I'm working on a number of different things. As I mentioned earlier, I have a 3-year-old son. He was born here in Napoli, and so I've really worked hard at reducing my travel, and if I do travel, trying to take him with me. So I'm trying to stay here close to home, and so I'm actually working on a film about Napoli, the city where we live in, which is a fascinating city. It's arguably Italy's most colorful city. It's also a very controversial city because it's beautiful, and yet it's chaotic. It's oftentimes misunderstood. There are a lot of stereotypes, but it's amazing. And so I'm working on this project. I'm starting the development of a new project about some ancient, again, here close to Naples, right at our back doorstep, some ancient papyrus scrolls that were buried in the eruption of Vesuvius that is most famously known for destroying the city of Pompeii, which is right here next to us also. So I'm doing some development work on a project about that. And then I'm also just starting the development on another Italian related project, which would be about the story about Enzo Ferrari and the Ferrari legacy, the racing, the road cars that people love and admire today. So those are kind of my three main things that I'm working on right now.
A lot of exciting projects, John. And is there anything you'd like to add before we, I guess, wrap up?
Oh, thank you for doing the interview. It's always a pleasure. And, for people that are stuck at home and can't go out, or even if you can go out, maybe you're taking a rest day. Um, I hope you have the chance to find one of my films and enjoy it. And, it gives you a little extra motivation when you are able to go out for a run or a bike ride or any physical activity that you do.
John, I want to thank you very much for your time, and I'd love to check back in with you, and if that works for you, and maybe a month, I don't, and see how things are going. And I just appreciate your time, and yes, and keep safe and be well. And again, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Bye for now.